Most economists have prophesied doom and gloom for a country with a declining population. But now, with roughly 20 countries for the first time actually growing smaller, the economic data is available. And surprisingly, this repeated narrative that the sky will fall has been proven flat out wrong.
Calling, 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 calling. Call a growth buster. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Hello, Growth Busters listeners. I'm Terry Spar. I'm the Executive Director of Earth Overshoot and a guest speaker today for the Growth Busters podcast while Dave Gardner is busy on the presidential campaign trail fighting for a more just, safe, and sustainable future for all Americans. I read a very intriguing study a few months ago, which helped confirm my own observations on the impact of changing population levels of a country and their effect on the economy. Most economists have prophesied this doom and gloom for a country with a declining population. But now, with roughly 20 countries for the first time actually growing smaller, the economic data is available. And surprisingly, this repeated narrative that the sky will fall has been proven flat out wrong. Today, we are speaking with Professors Theodore Lianos of the Department of Economics of Athens University and Anastasia Pseiridis from the Institute of Urban Environment and Human Resources in Pantheon University in Athens, Greece. They are two of the three authors of a recent study on this subject that was published widely in Nature.com in October 2023 titled Declining Population and GDP Growth. Welcome to the show, Anastasia and Theodore. Tell the listeners about your background and why you were drawn to this area of interest.
I'm an emeritus professor right now. I did my postgraduate work at North Carolina State University at Raleigh, my PhD. And then I got my first job at the University of California, Davis. And then I came back home, where I taught for several decades economics at the Athens School of Economics and Business. We got into this area about 10 years ago, and we wrote together, Anastasia and myself, 2 or 3 papers attempting to find what is the maximum and optimal population for the entire world. That's how we started. And finally, we discovered some countries that have declining populations rather than increasing. And that's where we are now.
Anastasia?
I studied economics in Athens in Greece and then did my master's and PhD at Cambridge University in the UK. My PhD was on industrial policy and business clusters. Following this, I drifted into various research issues. But while I was doing that, my interest in general issues of sustainability has risen, both at the personal level and at my work level. As I learned more about the effects of economic activity on the environment, I wanted to understand how this impact is created and how we can reduce it. In this context, I think I was lucky that Theodore shared the same interest and we started working together on these issues.
Theodore, you mentioned that this is a relatively newer phenomena where we are starting to experience countries with declining population levels. When did this trend first start, and roughly how many countries now have declining populations?
Well, in the study we did, we have 19 countries. Now we have one more country, which is China, and we have one country with constant population, which is Greece. Now, from the declining population, only 3 of those, Italy, Japan, and Portugal, are developed in a relative sense. The other countries are members of the Soviet Union until 1990, or in the Eastern Europe, which were also under the control of the Soviet Union. So they began a process of readjustment to a new social system. And part of that was a continuing declining population. These countries have lost a lot of people. For instance, Albany now has half the population it had 20 years ago.
Albania.
Yeah, well, I said Albany. I meant Albania. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. And so the study that you all performed, which I read in nature.com in October of 2023, what did you discover with countries with these declining populations, regarding employment levels, wages, overall economic prosperity and quality of life?
The first thing which is certain, and it's documented, is GDP is growing. GDP per capita is also growing. The level of, let's say, prosperity is much higher. Now, whether they are happier or not, I do not know. But in terms of material wealth, they are much better now.
We also found that the labor participation rate increased. As labor became scarcer, more people found it good to go to work. And real wages increased.
And unemployment declined.
Yes. So all these are good things for the people, for simple people.
Were you surprised by the data?
Yes, I was. I don't know about Anastasia. I think she was also surprised.
And nobody has done this before. The research so far is about declining rates of population growth. Still, the population grows in the countries that are under examination. There is no study yet, as far as we know, that somebody looked into countries with declining absolute numbers of population.
Yeah, I am not aware of any study, and that's why I was fascinated to see this, because I felt that this, well, I'll call the predominant narrative from the media, especially from economists and articles that are written by economists, it seems to be with a pessimistic outlook toward declining fertility rates and declining population levels, but we really didn't have that data. And, I guess you're saying you were surprised. I guess tell us, were you surprised only after doing the study, or did you have a feeling that this was a likelihood, or what were your thoughts on this?
Well, actually, we did not have any idea. We just looked at the data and we thought that this was a good opportunity to do something original. As you said, there is a tradition in the minds of the people that large families are happy families. And therefore, there's a cultural thing, there's a tradition that larger families is a good thing. Now, for some countries, this has a meaning. For instance, countries that do not have solid social system, security blanket. They need children for the old age. But in rich countries like European countries or the United States, the role of children is not such importance. In that sense, it was a surprise to see that it was happening.
So a question then with this sort of shifting in age demographics. If I took economics back in college 30 years ago. It's been 35 years. And one of the things that I understood was one of the concerns that these economists are saying is we will have fewer workers to take care of a large population of all elderly people. But if the population is declining, I guess there'll be fewer goods and services needed for fewer consumers. So it seems to me that demand and supply would sort of stay relatively equal. Are you seeing that play out in these countries with declining populations? Is this age demographic change a problem?
Well, this is a very important question and very interesting. Yes, of course, there will be fewer people, as you said, but this does not translate necessarily to fewer working people. So, as we saw with our data, more people go to work and enter the workforce, and more people work in the end in these countries. Secondly, the number of people who work does not matter so much as matters technology. We live in a period that technology makes things better all the time. Well, for whom it makes it better, for people or the environment is another issue, but technology enables us to produce more output with the same hours, let's say, with the same people. So there will be fewer people, but not necessarily less production. And of course, as you said, there will be a smaller demand, which is good. Because if you have a lower demand, this translates to a lower demand for resources, which means that production costs will be lower, which means that in the market, the price that will ensue, the prices for all the goods that will ensue will be lower. And lower prices means a better life. More people can enjoy the fruits of civilization, let's say, if I may say so. So I cannot see a problem here.
I think I read that in Japan with I think their population declined last year in 2023 by 700,000 people. And as a result, unlike here in the United States, where housing is a major concern and a major crisis, affordable housing, in Japan, I would guess that the housing is abundant and affordable.
Yeah.
And I think if I understand you too, the nice thing or a positive outcome from declining populations is that per capita GP, per person gross domestic product is actually increasing, which is interesting, even though maybe total GDP may be declining just based on the total number of people in the country. Is that correct?
The important point here is that per capita product is increasing.
Mm-hmm.
Higher wages, more people in the labor force, less unemployment. That means in a few years, those countries will be very rich. They can finance the old age people for security, health, and so on.
This is completely the opposite of everything I have read about how the media and the economists portray the threat of these future countries and countries that are going through declining populations. It's astounding. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think people used to think in a certain way. They cannot think otherwise. And they continue the same story.
Yes.
Yeah, of course, there are interests, economic interests in continuing this. Business people want people with low wages, and they want people to consume the products. And that's irrational. You can have less people, higher wages, higher GDP per capita, happier people, and also a sustainable environment.
So tell me, in the research that you did, were there any negative aspects that you would give as a word of caution to countries that are beginning or seeing declining populations?
There probably are, but we could not notice it. For instance, as things change, older people are left behind, and they cannot get, continue like the younger population. So you would have internal conflicts, but conflicts exist in all countries, in all ages.
Mm-hmm. And were there any surprises when you were studying these countries that you researched? Were there any surprises that came out?
I think we found a worrying aspect, but this is a little bit on the fringe of what we did. For example, while we were researching for the paper, we looked at the ecological footprints of these countries and the ecological result. By result, I mean biocapacity minus footprint. And there is a quite worrying aspect in that the increase of per capita GDP might have led to an increase in per capita ecological footprint. This happened in at least 11 countries out of the 19. So we had the increase in per capita affluence, and at the same time in these countries we had an increase in per capita impact. However, the per capita biocapacity, which is the good news, increased in all but one of these countries, all but Italy. The good thing is that I think in 14 of those countries, we had the result which was improvement, like the deficit was reduced or the deficit turned into a surplus. These are at the fringe of our research, but we study those numbers to understand better. So we have not negative aspects, but some signs of hope towards the ecological balance of economic activity when population declines.
Right. So if I understand you, you're saying when the population is declining in these countries, we're seeing people who are living better, their lives are improving, their per capita GDP is increasing, and their affluence is better. They're consuming more, which hurts the carrying capacity of the natural resources that we all use. But because overall there are fewer people, their biocapacity or their resources are actually improving.
Yes, the per capita.
Yes. That's terrific, and that's fascinating. That's really good data and good news.
At the same time, the global per capita impact increased, did not decrease. The global per capita biocapacity decreased, not increased, as in these countries, and the global deficit increased even more. So this is contrary to the global trend about the per capita figures.
Right. Because the global trend is 180 other countries whose populations are either level or inclining.
Yes.
Yes. So we have 20 or so that are declining and 180 that are increasing.
Exactly.
Okay.
We do not say that population should decline and continue to decline and continue to decline. We are saying that there is an optimal size at which you would have the benefits of cooperation between people and avoid the bads. If you achieve that, then you are in good shape. The country in good shape and the world as a whole.
So that optimal size is both good for human health, but also planetary health.
That's right.
Your data is excellent in helping to, bring that subject to the forefront. But how difficult a conversation is that for people to have because of all the issues behind population control?
Well, this is a hot and difficult topic to cover, but personally, I don't see it as control. Personally, I see it as a freeing people from a certain and bleak future. But the brains of people, I think what is holding us back as a global society is that our brains are still 20,000 years ago, that we needed people to feel safe and to use nature because nature was vast and difficult to manage. Now we don't live in the same conditions, and evolution takes time. So even this pronatalism that exists, which is so harmful to individuals, I hope it will go away soon, but it harms people and we don't understand it. It harms people today and the kids of people, of today's people. So I think we should be grateful to people who are brave enough and have been bold enough to do what they wish, if they wish to be child-free, and we should find a way as a society to pay these people, because the effect of this choice has positive externalities to society. We have to work so that people can understand that.
So you sort of end the conclusion of the study saying your study examined countries that had a population level of less than 10% of the world's population, which is still a substantial number of people. Would the benefits of declining populations change if fertility rates keep dropping and more countries see declining populations? Do you think this trend that your study did, which was maybe 10%, if 20% or 30 or 40 or 50% of the world, would you think that the same sort of results would factor in as this, trend may continue?
Well, we thought about that many times. The answer to that is that we see no reason for the opposite things to happen. I think the same things, that is, GDP per capita will go up, wages will go up, unemployment will go down, even if that happens for the entire world.
And also the environment will benefit, and the cost of production, the cost of resources will be less, much less. So less conflicts, less wars.
Yeah.
There's an interesting thing, which I think I should point out. About a century ago, John Maynard Keynes, whom I'm sure you know, he gave a speech and he said, without a major wars and with constant population, the world will have solved the economic problem within 100 years. Now, he didn't say anything about declining population, but he said about constant population. So the basic idea is that population must decline and stay constant on the optimal level. Now, we have estimated, not just us, other people also, that the optimum population for the world is about 4 billion. We are already 8. So we have to go back. Others find 3 billion, others find 4 billion. Let's say if we go down 50%, that will be fine.
We estimated 3 billion, 3.1, with the average per capita GDP. So average is quite small for all of us where we live now.
Yes. Was there anything else that you, in conclusion, that you would like to share with the listeners as far as the study, or just any sort of positive or hopeful messages?
One thing that bothers me is the effect that various institutions have. For instance, the church. Catholics favor large families. Orthodox, the same thing. Muslims, the same thing. So if you have those powerful institutions leading people to one direction, it's very difficult to change it. It has become a tradition. To talk about population is a taboo. If you say something about declining population, people look at you as if you're out of your mind. That's all.
Well, I think that's a great summary, because I think what your work has shown, and hopefully will be published worldwide, will influence, hopefully, economists on how they go forward thinking about and writing about, countries with declining populations, that it is a good thing for their people and for the country. And the governments will hear this too and see that. And maybe those types of stakeholders will help influence, or will be counteract the influences of some of these negative forces of growth, pronatalism, as you said, Anastasia. Any thoughts, hopeful, or any message you'd like to leave?
My hope is that people can just look at the facts and try to think about the future in a more constructive way, without the burdens from what we know from the past, from our parents and grandparents. I mean, circumstances change, and we have to be proactive and create a better future for everybody. So let's look at the facts and see what we can do.
Terrific. Thank you very much to both of you for both the hard work and time and just effort in going to producing this fantastic study and getting it published in nature.com. Look forward to seeing more of your work, and excited to be able to share your knowledge and experience and data with the rest of the world as far as we can reach.
Well, thank you very much, Terry.
Thank you for this invitation. It was a really enjoyable conversation, and the questions were very nice.
Thank you again, Anastasia and Theodore, for a fantastic podcast interview with you all through Growthbusters here. We will add a link to the study at the bottom of the notes when we send it out to everybody. Again, this is Terry Spar. We partner with Growthbusters, earthovershoot.org. If you'd like to come visit our site and learn more about what we do as well.
Some may dream to pave mountains and streams, but not me. I'm a growth buster. Some may just want more, but don't know what it's for, but not me. I'm a growth buster. Don't want a solution at the cost of pollution. They think bigger is better at the cost of the weather. But no, not us. We are the growth busters. Calling, 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 calling.